My name's Branden. I'm a world traveler, foodie, and YouTuber. Together, you and I will find the best travel hacks, tips, and best places to explore. Join me as we find new adventures together, live only on IBM.TV. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Best of Travel here on IBMTV. My name is Branden. If you are new to the show, welcome. We go live every Tuesday at 11 o'clock Eastern here on IBMTV, and you're more than welcome to leave a comment below. The best part of the stream, of course, is that it's live, so if you're on the IBMTV Facebook page or YouTube channel, you can, just ask your questions, give us little shouts, and we'll respond to your questions and, make sure you have the best trip every time. If you're new to the show, this is Best of Travel. We talk all about travel tips, tricks, and hacks to give you the best vacation possible. Of course, we're all sheltering in place, so we're looking to the future. We're looking for some travel inspiration and maybe some travel hacks to make sure that we, when we can travel again, are able to do so, in a really efficient, fun, and affordable way. So today on the show, I'm very excited. We have a wonderful guest. His name is Doug Sands. Doug is an adventurer, a hypnotist, and a mental health advocate. He produces and hosts Making Meaning, which is a podcast about how adventurous people have overcome all of their struggles to reach their dreams. Welcome to the show, Doug. Good morning. How are you, Doug?
I'm doing very well. How about you?
I'm good. Thanks. I'm good. Thanks for jumping in and doing the interview today.
Absolutely.
So tell me a little bit about yourself. I mean, who are you? Where are you from? What's your bio?
You bet. I call myself the adventure hypnotist because I work with people who want to live that adventurous life, whether that's doing outdoor things like I personally like to do, or whether it's traveling around the world and exploring new places. I work with those people to overcome their anxiety because that's really where I started out. I grew up in Wisconsin in the US in a very rural area where there wasn't a lot of adventure to be had. And it wasn't until I really started taking ownership of my life and stepping into that lead role that I had my own epiphanies about what adventure actually is. And I had to overcome so much anxiety and depression and other mental health issues just to get where I am today. And that's really what makes what I do so personal, is that I see people in the same position that I was in back then. And having the tools that I have now, it's just such a joy to share them with them.
Well, it seems like some of those tools are much needed in this current time.
Yes.
So I'm glad you do what you do. You're a cheesehead, Wisconsin, huh?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay.
I lived about 6 months in Green Bay, the home of the Green Bay Packers. So yeah.
Okay. All right. And where have you migrated to now? Have you settled down? Are you in the States? What's your?
I'm in the States. So I moved to Utah this last winter to work at a ski season job. I'd never skied before, but fell in love with it. And COVID shut the lodge down, and so we lost our homes and our jobs within 6 days. Spent some time homeless, spent some time living in an Airbnb, and now we are a little more settled. I say we because it's me and my partner. We'd been
not the royal we.
Yeah, exactly. We'd been best friends for about 4 months, but we'd been dating for about 3 weeks when the ski lodge job shut down, and so we moved into the back of my truck together, and I'd built up a camper setup, so it wasn't like we're just living on a bare bed. But this was the middle of March in the Western United States, and we had quite an experience, freezing and doing these awesome hikes and quarantining out in the desert. But we lived the summer in Salt Lake City, and now we have just recently moved to Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Oh, Santa Fe. That's
Mhm.
lovely. Well, if there ever was a place to do the van life style or live out of your car, Santa Fe is a good place for it. It's
You got it. You
you
got it.
know, beautiful temperatures. You can leave your windows down all night, get some cool desert breeze. And
Mhm.
well, I could definitely relate to that. I mean, I very much so ended up in a similar boat. I think with the pandemic shutting down, being evacuated back to the states, and going, oh, I don't have anywhere to live. So I
Yeah.
feel you. I feel you there. So tell me, how did you start this journey? I mean, so working at a ski lodge, starting in Wisconsin. I mean, did you always love travel? Was that something that you just liked the adventuring aspect? What was that like growing up? What was that
Oh
like when you
gosh,
were
this
young?
this goes way back. So I grew up on a dairy farm, and there was no travel to be had. We didn't take vacations because we had cows to milk every night, and so I was always dreaming about travel. And then I went to college, and things that I started seeing opportunities to travel, and I didn't take them because I was still in that mindset of being on the farm. And it wasn't until I did some drastic things. I dropped out of college and moved halfway across the country. Um, I actually moved to Maine to work on a high ropes course because I had a fear of heights. And it wasn't until I did that it clicked that I can do this, and it's all right. It's safe for me to do this. And once that happened, I just had the travel bug, and I spent some time in New Hampshire. Almost froze to death on a hike in New Hampshire. Um, Came out here to Utah, and my plan is, I should say, my plan this coming year, before COVID, was to hike across the country on the Pacific Crest Trail, and that got postponed, but still sometime in the future. I think right now we are focusing on, when everything opens up, my partner and I would really like to go to Eastern Europe to save some money and build up our online businesses before we really commit to the nomadic life.
Okay. So a dairy farm. That's so funny. I don't want to talk about myself at all,
Yeah.
on this show. I scream into the void enough on the internet, but I grew up in rural Ohio, in Amish country,
Oh,
Ohio. So my cousins had a dairy farm, and I had the opposite perspective of that. That was always where we went to have adventures
gotcha.
because you
Yeah.
could go out to the dairy farm and it was like, but you could play in the barns, you could, run with the dogs, you'd be out in the woods. I mean, it was always
Yeah.
that was where I found some of those adventures. So that's so funny to see that different perspective. So this sounds super interesting to me. And I have to ask, I read you're Buddhist on your website,
Mhm.
but you're living or near Salt Lake.
Yeah.
And that's a very, I would think, not Buddhist friendly part of the country, to put it lightly.
There are a lot of misconceptions about Salt Lake City. Um, I also thought, being the home of the Mormon Church, it would be very, very strict and not very friendly. But I fell in love with Salt Lake City. Like, if anyone is looking for a city to move to in the U.S., it's beautiful. You are no more than like 30 to 40 minutes from a trailhead at any time in the city. The hiking is beautiful, and the downtown is actually very gorgeous. But talking about religion, the Mormon Church is not nearly as I don't want to say oppressive, but it doesn't have it doesn't have as big a public presence as you would think there. I mean, if you're a Mormon, of course it does, but I think half of Salt Lake City is non-Mormon, and actually a city like just down the highway where Brigham Young University is, called Provo. That's kind of become the new center of Mormondom, because like that area is like 90% Mormon, but Salt Lake City is a very adventurous place, and I actually didn't have too much trouble finding other Buddhists in Salt Lake. I will say, we only connected over Zoom this year, but yeah, it's a beautiful place to be.
As we all are connecting over Zoom. That's so funny to me. I don't remember a lot about Salt Lake when I was there, and this may speak to me as a person too much, but I do remember that they had to mix drinks behind, like they couldn't mix drinks at bars in front of you. They
Yes.
had to like take them back and mix them in the back.
Yeah, there are those unique things. Like, you can definitely tell the Mormon Church has their fingers in every single pie in that city. My girlfriend is a bartender at times, and she had to go through that training, and it took her like a full day just to go through the regulations of making drinks and not serving people too much alcohol. And so, yeah, it's a very interesting city, but I love it.
Oh, I bet. I bet. So we're 10 minutes in. We've already touched on religion, though, just hitting all the hot button topics right away here, going
You got it.
going deep. So you said you were had just recently started dating and now you've moved in
Mhm.
together. How has that been during a pandemic? That's something
Oh,
that's a challenge, right?
it's it
Or is
has
it delightful?
I'd say it's delightful. Um,
If they're watching right now, you're like in the corner. It's delightful, I promise.
no, they're out of the house, but um, I think so. We met at the ski lodge and we became like best friends. And we didn't date for like 4 months. And I think that steady foundation really set us up for success because when we moved into the truck together, if we just started dating, just willy nilly or something, I think it would have blown apart. But because we had that steady foundation, it really strengthened us. And we went through quite this summer has been wild. After living in the truck, we got scammed out of $1,000. We got robbed. Our Airbnb got broken into. Um, we we just had so many different wild adventures. We got kicked out of a friend's house that we were staying at because the roommates didn't like us. And once it settled down, like once we got through all that wild crap, we were golden because if we can get through that as a couple, then what else can they really throw at us? And I'm sure like we're still going to have struggles as any couple does, but I think that it tested our mettle and it really showed me that we have got something that's pretty firm and pretty solid in our relationship.
This is super unique because you just said all of those things, which most people would say are really terrible tribulations, challenging things. You said it in such a positive way while smiling, and you referred to them as adventures. Does that come from the Buddhist part of you? Does that come from the hypnosis? I mean, where do you get that aptitude?
It wasn't something I naturally came by, but I do think part of it is from Buddhism because um, in Buddhism there's this idea that it's not the joyful people who are grateful; it's grateful people who have joy.
Mm.
Gratitude comes first, and that's backed up by modern psychology. And so when that happened, I was devastated. Of course, like we're homeless now. We lost $1,000 when we're both broke and don't have jobs, and we got robbed. And looking at it, if I looked at just the negative side of it, it would have driven me insane. I would have stewed on it and just allowed it to consume me. But that I knew that there was part of it that I could grow from, and also I think part of it was that I knew if I let myself indulge in those negative feelings, and indulge is a weird word, but I knew I couldn't sink into that state and really be pessimistic and depressed about it because I was depending on my partner and she was depending on me to basically survive this year. I'd say that.
Okay. That's a remarkable skill set to have at any age, let
Yeah.
alone under age 50, I would think, to be able to look at life that way. So kudos to you for developing some of those tools.
Thank you.
I do think I want to talk a little bit about your podcast because that's why we're here today, right? So you did an episode recently called "When Life Beats You Over the Head," and that seemed to hit home in the current
Yeah.
moment, right?
Yes.
And in that episode, you said and you explained it in the episode, but I want to have you re-explain it to me here here on the air. But your kind of quote or statement or mantra was failure is only feedback,
Mhm.
and you talked a lot about that. So what does that mean? What does failure is only feedback mean?
So that exact quote comes from, I believe it's neurolinguistic programming, which is kind of an offshoot of hypnosis. But that idea had been with me for a lot longer before I discovered that. There isn't anything that we do in life, at least in my perspective, that is a complete failure because we are learning all the time. Our mind is a learning machine, and it is constantly soaking up information. And even if you completely bomb a presentation or a relationship blows up, you're still learning from that experience. And that idea that failure is only feedback is supposed to give people courage to go out and attempt things that you might risk failure, but when you're framing it as feedback, as something that you can learn from, it's such a more open dynamic. And I think, there was something else I was going to add about that. It'll come back to me in a second.
Well, let me challenge you a little bit on that because I think this is very important for the moment. Um, how do you take that same mindset? And I would say now in the pandemic, even myself included, a lot of people don't necessarily feel like they've failed or feel failure. They feel more
Yeah.
defeated by the world. So how do you take that? Can you flip that for me from failure to defeat? Is there a way to look at defeat in a less less frustrating way?
Absolutely. That was the thing I was going to add. I often tell my clients and people, listening to the podcast, that we don't get the adventure that we want. We get the adventure that we need. And when I was homeless and living in that truck and then scammed and robbed, that was not the adventure I wanted. I wanted to do amazing hikes and just live an awesome life and be able to travel as much as I wanted. But I think I needed to essentially be beaten over the head, I guess, by life this year. Because if I can survive all of that and not only have a positive outlook, but have a steady relationship, what else can I do? Like this year has been a trial by fire for a lot of us. And if we can survive this, think of how awesome it's going to be when things go back to normal, when we can travel freely, when we can do amazing things like going to Europe or going to Southeast Asia for the first time. It's going to be a culture shock. But if I can survive this year, think of how simple that is going to be. It's just one day at a time, learning new things and really building up those skill sets. And I also at times have felt that defeat, like life is completely crushing you down. And I think for me this year, I had a little bit of advantage. I had a partner who was also in the same situation. I think had I been alone, it would have been a lot more difficult. I would have had a lot more rough days. But to anyone who's feeling that defeat from this year, I would say, first off, give yourself some forgiveness, because we're all still trying to live up to that American dream of being super fit and super productive and very wealthy. But this year it might not happen. And just be okay with that. There's this idea from Buddhism called radical okayness. And it's simply being okay with not being okay at the moment. Knowing that
I think that's the motto for this show here that I do. It's radically okay.
yeah. Yeah. Just being okay that things are maybe not the best right now, but that things will get better. And realizing that no matter what happens, you're still alive. And even if you have to knuckle under and give up some dreams like I did with the PCT this year, things will get better. And I know that optimism can be really difficult. I work with people with mental health issues, and I had it myself. So just telling someone it's hopeful does not always work. I would recommend to people who are feeling that defeat to find something that works for you, that makes you feel good, whether that's meditation, whether that's just taking walks, whether that's hypnosis or religion or something. We all need something, especially this year, to, I don't want to say cling to, but to give us a rope in those times when we are struggling.
So let's pivot a little bit to travel. Your kind of brand of travel is one that I've always dreamed of doing. I definitely don't have the maybe the skill set to do a lot of very nature based hiking, outdoorsman like travel. Tell me a little bit about some of your favorite times, your favorite trips, maybe your favorite hikes, maybe just favorite places that you've been and had some of these adventures.
Oh gosh. Um, I fell in love with Maine. That was where I hiked my very first mountain on Tumbledown Mountain. Highly recommend that. There's a lake up there on top of the mountain and spectacular views. That's one of my favorite hikes. Um, New Hampshire's White Mountain area is stunning. The hikes are pretty hard because they go straight up the mountain instead of switchbacking back and forth. But there's one in that area called the Lafayette Ridge. That was actually the one I almost froze on, but I intend to go back there because it's very famous, and you get like 3 miles of unrestricted 360-degree views. Um, Coming out west, I was just blown away by the beauty of this place. The Wasatch Range, just outside of Salt Lake City, that's a very, very beautiful hiking area, and also surprisingly some of the best skiing in the country. I also really liked, oh, what was it? Southern Utah has a lot of national parks. I liked that area, and I also liked northern Arizona. Highly recommend those areas.
So, I mean, you talk a lot about anxiety. The things you just described, hiking up a mountain in the freezing cold, that would give me anxiety. Drop me off in a city in the middle of nowhere in Colombia and let me fumble around for a while and I'm fine. But something like that takes that kind of physical and mental endurance would just wig me out. How do you still get anxiety, and how do you deal with it?
I definitely still get anxiety. A lot of people think, you wave the magic hypnosis wand and you're just fixed, but it's a continual process. It's just a treatment modality. When I don't get anxious out on the trail because that's where I feel most at home. I think we're actually opposite that way. When I get dropped in a new city, I feel anxious because, like, where am I going to sleep? Am I going to be safe? Where's my next meal coming from? To anyone who's really lived that lifestyle, these questions sound very, very simplistic, very plain. But I'm the opposite side on that because I've experienced so much hiking that I know I'm going to be safe, and I know if something happens, I'm going to be able to get myself out of that situation.
So you've watched Survivor a lot, the show. That's I mean, Utah's a great place for nature activities.
Mhm.
Are you mentioned skiing a little bit. Are you a big snow person, or do you prefer the heat in the desert?
Oh, I have a very interesting dichotomy with that because I have most of my life suffered from seasonal affective disorder, not having enough sunlight in the winter. But this last season, I moved to Alta, Utah on the recommendation of a friend. And they have, they call it the best snow on earth. And falling in love with skiing has really kind of turned me around. Like, I've got that love-hate relationship with snow. Like, I don't want to be frozen, but I really want to, slide around on it on skis. And so my partner and I have really talked about what we want our life to be. I think we do want, ski trips, but I don't think that I should be in a wintry location for a full season because that's pretty rough for me.
So somewhere where you can have your warm and then go up into the mountains
You
for
got
your
it.
ski trips. That's
You
a
got it.
that's a good plan. Well, we're coming up on our break here, and I want to talk a little bit more after the break about your kind of business side and how you got into hypnotism. But I did want to ask. I mean, what's next for you as far as your travel adventures? I mean, you've talked a little bit about what you had in mind for this year, hoping that things maybe next summer go back a little bit more to
Yeah.
normal. What are you gonna do? What's the first thing you're gonna want to step outside and
Yeah.
go do?
Go outside of the country. I've never been outside of the country except for Canada, and I want to fly to Europe or I want to fly to Southeast Asia. We're looking at flight deals and seeing which is the better option financially. I want somewhere where the dollar stretches a little further so that um, in these lean years, or I don't want to say lean years, lean months, as I'm setting up the online business and getting that rolling, that we can live comfortably without sacrificing these dreams that we're both building up. And so, personally, I'm really looking at Eastern Europe and Georgia, and that's, yeah, looking forward to that.
Well, I mean, I would recommend Bali if you want somewhere where your dollar stretches
Gotcha.
far. It's a beautiful place.
Nice.
If you want to do tropics, you get a
Yeah.
lot of sunshine there too. Well, we're gonna head into this break here. When we come back, we're gonna do some more with Doug. We're gonna talk a little bit about hypnotism. We're gonna talk a little bit about his business ventures and a little bit more about some of his wild misadventures. You're watching Best of Travel here on IBM TV. Stick around with us after the break for more of Doug Sands. Travel. It doesn't have to be complicated and it doesn't have to be expensive. When you think of travel, it can be easy to get overwhelmed from pricey airline flights, dates of your hotel, navigating in Ubers and taxis in foreign languages, and currency exchange. It can feel really complicated, but it doesn't have to be. Let me help you break down travel into some easy, simple steps so that way you can take the trip of a lifetime without breaking the bank or stressing yourself out. Travel is more complicated now than ever, so having a guide who's experienced to help you navigate the world of travel can be priceless. And it is priceless. It's free to watch here on IBM TV and free to subscribe to my YouTube channel, where I'll give you some great travel tips and advice. There's nothing quite like snapping that photo at sunset in Paris, trying great coffee in Colombia, or adventuring around Spain having a great sunny day. Even if you want to travel domestically, from budget travel guides in New Orleans, New York, Paris, and London, to luxury travel guides and everything in between, travel can be so much fun and so much more affordable than you think. I hope you're having a great time watching me here live on IBM TV. I have a ton of fun making Travel Tuesdays Travel with Branden, and I hope you're having a lot of fun watching. If you're enjoying what you're seeing, swing by my YouTube channel. You can find my YouTube channel full of great travel tips, some travel hacks, some food recommendations, city guides, budget travel tips, and so much more. Subscribing on YouTube is free to do, and it helps support me and continue making great travel content for you to see. You can also visit me online at thebrandonscott.com, where you can get even more travel advice, some great links, and some in-depth breakdowns of trips I've taken and trips you can plan. It's a great way to find a little bit of inspiration for your next adventure and some travel tips. I've got cities both domestic and international that you can check out. Find the best places to eat, the best things to see, the best things to do, and how to do it all affordably. Whether you want to stay at Airbnbs or five-star luxury hotels, there are great ways you can do all of those things on a budget. Swing by my YouTube channel, give that big red subscribe button some love, and don't forget to visit thebrandonscott.com for even more travel tips. From great photos in Paris, to awesome food in Spain, to wild adventures in Colombia. If you want to adventure and you want to see more, this is the place to do it. Now back to, I guess, live me on IBM TV. Enjoy Travel Tuesdays and Travel with Branden.
And I ran away out of all this gray. I just went out.
Welcome back to the show. Welcome back to Best of Travel. You're watching live here on IBM TV every Tuesday at 11. If you have any questions for Doug or for me, feel free to leave them in the comments below. They'll pop up and we can either answer them now or we can always respond to your comments because this video is going out into the internet forever. So Doug, I wanna ask a little bit now because here we are doing this live StreamYard interview, and I am not a live person. I make videos, record videos, edit them, and then put them out into the world, and that's it. So I always get anxiety watching myself like back live on the screen, watching like the ad breaks play. So How? I mean, what are your top? What's your top tool for overcoming, maybe an anxious attack or some of those anxieties? What's your go-to
Yeah.
tool? Yeah.
Oh gosh. I would say it has to be breath work because, so I should say that working with anxiety clients, I give them tools that they can use in between sessions in case they have a panic attack or something comes up. I've actually compiled these tools into a video series I give away on my website. I call it the 7-Day Stress-Free Challenge. But what I typically do focuses on breath work, and this is what I learned from yoga and meditation. And it's not exactly hypnosis, but it's all, so the most basic concept, I call it 7-11 breathing, and it goes by many names, 4-7-8, and elongated breath. But it's simply about breathing out longer than you breathe in. So in this instance, you breathe in for a count of 7, breathe out for a count of 11, and it really helps if you purse your lips on the exhale so you have enough breath. But what that does, it sends a reverse signal up the vagus nerve to your brain, and it says your body says it's all right to be calm, so your brain can be calm too. You're kind of reverse engineering that common fight or flight syndrome that gets your heart racing. And that's really the technique that I fall back on most often when I feel anxiety, because you can do it literally anywhere.
How did you learn all this? Did you have a mentor, or did you how did you pick up that technique, and can you show it to us too?
Yeah,
I mean, I don't
absolutely.
want to do an ASMR video here, but I feel like we're on the verge.
Yeah. So the breath work, I mean, that one is very simple to do. You just breathe in for a count of 7 and then hold it for a second and then purse your lips and breathe out for a count of 11. And I can actually walk through one of my favorite ones very quickly about the same time. This is another one on that series. It works on the same idea, but it doesn't do it consciously. So this one is called peripheral vision, and it comes from a hypnotist out of New York City named Melissa Tiers. She's very big in the hypnosis industry. But to do this, all you have to do is find a point to focus your eyes on. And it helps if that point is somewhere above eye level.
Do I
Because
want
when
to
you're
look at something bright, or do I want to look at something like not bright? I've got a lot
something
of
not
lights.
bright, so that you can
Okay, so-
look at it for like 30 or 60 seconds.
Um,
Find something above eye level, because when you're looking above eye level, your brain automatically shifts into alpha state, which is that frequency we're at where we're in light trance or like highway hypnosis or just daydreaming. So find that point and then lock your eyes on it. And as you do, begin to notice what you can notice on the edges of your vision without moving your eyes, keeping them locked exactly where they are. Notice what you can notice on the edges. Can you see details? Can you see colors? What can you see on the edges of your vision? And how far back does it actually go? And when you do that, your mind automatically shifts into that deep breathing state, that vagus nerve state where you're taking those deep breaths and really feeling those calm states. So it's a double whammy. You get the alpha kind of light trance from it, but you also get that vagus nerve deep breathing. And that happens naturally. Like you're kind of tricking your brain into deep breathing without even realizing it. And that's one of my favorites because like 7-11 breathing, you can do it anywhere. I've done it like right outside a conference room or right before a presentation or even before a session if I'm not really feeling up to it that day. It's something that is always with me, and it's one of my favorites.
So does that does that relate to, you mentioned like tunnel vision on the highway? Is that why most people feel like relaxed when driving? They are kind of focused in that way?
Yeah, I would say so. I think what most people don't realize about hypnosis is that we're doing it to ourselves all the time. Literally, when you're driving your car and you zone out, let's say you forget what you're doing, and all of a sudden you're in your driveway, like you've arrived home. You are in hypnosis. Hypnosis is a state that your brain naturally creates, and it's the same when you are daydreaming or in a really deep, like guided meditation, or if you are watching a movie. Like, think about the last time you watched a TV show or a movie. You didn't remember exactly what was happening in the room around you. You didn't think about the potted plant in the corner or the rug under your feet or the color of the couch underneath you. you were so focused on that screen that it was as if you were participating in that. And that's really what hypnosis feels like.
So, you using some of those techniques to kind of overcome some of that anxiety. I mean, I definitely am a fan of breathing. When I get really anxious, for sure. Taking I've always came from like a musical background, so I do it in counts of four.
Yeah.
And four time and count it that way. But that's something I've definitely heard. I've not heard of the focusing technique. What was that
Yeah.
called? Focusing?
Peripheral vision.
Your peripheral vision.
Yeah.
But that's seems like a very interesting technique. Was this something you learned by reading, learned by doing? I mean, how did you get interested in hypnotism?
Oh gosh, I basically consumed everything that I could for free, and then I started paying for certifications. I was searching for something to calm my own anxiety, and I discovered meditation through a podcast. And through listening to a bunch of different meditation podcasts, I discovered early hypnosis, I guess I should say, primitive hypnosis. And I started learning about it, and I'd heard about this podcast out of Toronto by this very famous hypnotist. And I learned basically all of the basics from that. And when I went to actually train with him and get my certification, I was amazed at how much I actually knew just from listening to the podcast. And I've gone to conferences and spoken with other hypnotists and really learned from a bunch of different teachers. So in hypnosis, there are really three ways that you can build your business. You can do stage shows. You can work with clients, helping relieve anxiety or whatever it is. Or you can teach other hypnotists. And a lot of people who work with clients eventually transition to teaching other hypnotists. But I got certified, and now I regularly just learn from other hypnotists, because what I love about that community, they're so focused on always learning more and always growing, because there's always new studies about hypnosis. There's always new techniques developed in these resources.
It sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, from what you've described so far, what you do is not at all cohesive to like stage performance. It's not that kind of theatrical hypnosis, to convince your friends you're a chicken thing. It's more in the vein of kind of the meditation, the thoughtfulness, the looking
Yes.
inwards. How does that translate from your Buddhism? Was that something that what were you first? Were you raised Buddhist, or did you become a hypnotist and then get into Buddhism? How did those work together?
So I grew up Christian, and I kind of fell out of the faith when I was having my depressive episode. And I didn't know it, but I was searching for something, because I thought I wasn't going to ever have any religion or practice again. But I came to that point where I couldn't keep living the way I was living. And I discovered meditation and Buddhism. And only when Buddhism was like this really foundational part of my identity did I discover hypnosis. And so I think that the two for me are inseparable, because there was a time after I was meditating for like almost a year that I was like, I'll just do some hypnosis every morning instead of meditating. And I quickly deteriorated. So like they're very interconnected for me. And when I work with a client, I always meet them where they're at. It's not like I am bringing Buddhism into every single session, but if that's something they're open to, I definitely do. And talking about stage shows and hypnosis, the tools that stage hypnotists use are kind of essentially the same tools that, client seeing hypnotists would use with a client, but the difference is the intention behind that. So in stage hypnosis, you get someone in that deep, relaxed state, and then you give them funny suggestions. In a therapeutic sense, you get them to that deep state, and then you use tools from neuroscience and psychology to really help them with that problem. Getting them to that state, that's one side of hypnosis, but then there's more that you have to build onto that and use actual tools that have been studied and learned and backed up by science.
So it sounds I've heard someone say, I don't know where I heard it, but they told me that stage hypnosis is more like marketing. you're using kind of the marketing techniques that we would use to create a powerful suggestion to get an immediate result. Whereas the kind of clinical hypnosis maybe you're describing is something you're going to use maybe similar techniques, but to not just get an immediate quick result, but to actually build a foundation. Is that fair to say?
That's an excellent way of putting it. I would say that stage hypnosis, it removes, what do you want to say? It removes inhibitions, not all of them, of course, but it makes you more open to doing things that you would otherwise do. And that's the key. Like, they're not doing ridiculous things like stripping naked or stabbing each other or doing something like that. They're doing things that they might otherwise do if in a similar situation, or when
or
they're
if
comfortable enough.
Drinking slightly, they might,
exactly.
also do.
You're not in stage hypnosis. You're not making like lasting change. Like, the person that goes home, they feel great because they got some positive suggestions at the end, but it's not like they're a completely new person. When you're working in clinical or therapeutic hypnosis, you are actually changing them at the identity level. And people ask, is hypnosis mind control? And I say, well, of course not, because you're working with a person's mind. Their mind is trying to keep them safe. And so unless a person comes to me already wanting to make that change, there's not a whole lot that I can do. But when they are ready to make that change, we can go back to old memories and old issues in their timeline, in their past, and really change them. And it's amazing to see the studies behind hypnosis that we're actually changing the protein structures of our brain. When you do hypnosis, or I should say, when you access any memory, you are rewriting that memory at the structural level. The protein is actually, it's called kinase C, and that protein gets reworked and reshaped around. So every time you change it intentionally with hypnosis, the same thing happens.
So tell me a little bit about your offerings. Let's talk a little bit for some of the travelers out there. The kind of services you offer, maybe some of your products, your podcasts, your one-on-one coaching sessions. I think first of all, with your voice, you should just put out a paywalled guided meditation series. You've got a great voice for that. But for people who maybe are watching who ask me questions like, how do I get over a fear of flying? What do I do when I'm panicking in a new city and I don't speak the language? Kind of those common travel phobias. What are some of your offerings, and how could that help someone who is struggling with some of those travel phobias?
The first thing I would send them is to that 7-day stress-free challenge, because those tools are backed by psychology, by neuroscience. And when I first discovered them, I didn't really take them for the powerful things that they actually are. Like, I was like, this thing takes like 30 seconds. How can it actually help me? But those are so powerful. Like, if I can't even describe how incredible they are, because you can do basically the therapy on yourself with those basic techniques. What I do is simply work through hypnosis and give you more resources with the knowledge that I have. But at a base level, that's where I would start, because you can get some excellent results out of that. If someone is looking at hypnosis, if they've never done it before and they're curious about it, I would send them to my Instagram page, because every single Friday I give out a 10 to 15 minute hypnosis session on a different topic. And it's not like me just putting you in a nice state and you feel very nice for 15 minutes. It's me actually using the same tools that I use in a client session and digging deep and breaking apart those issues. And so it's free therapy, I guess you could say. And the podcast itself, they can find me at, I think, anywherehypnosis.com/podcast. And that's all about, as we talked about, interviewing adventurers. And along the way, I intersperse some learnings that I've learned from hypnosis and psychology and other things. If there's one website someone that wants to find me on, that's anywherehypnosis.com. Like, if that's the one thing they remember, that's where you can get links to everything.
So doing this podcast, I mean, I'm a big fan of, I think, connecting with others and talking to others is a great way to kind of learn yourself. What are some of your favorite episodes or interviews or kind of moments from the podcast?
Oh, gosh. I really love interviewing the adventurous people I meet and discovering so much more about them. I think episode 6, my interview with Zoe Gray, that was my very first interview, and it was absolutely amazing. I also really liked, I think, episode 13 with Caitlin Rose. I didn't know Caitlin before we jumped on the podcast. And by the end of that hour-long conversation, I was like, I want to be her best friend because she's awesome. Like, getting to know people at that deep level is such a rewarding experience. And I don't shy away from the deep questions on that podcast. Like, I'm big on mental health and the tough conversations. And so I don't intentionally take us there, but I find that our conversations often go down that route.
I mean, that's a challenging route to navigate, I think, for people, let alone to do it to help other people, to be able to help other people navigate that pathway. I think probably business will be booming for you after the pandemic, because a lot of folks, need a little bit of strength building and tool building.
Yeah.
So you have kind of a variety of offerings for folks. I think that people who travel a lot of times are just anxious about the kind of general aspect of leaving your comfort zone and kind of jumping out into the unknown. I always have recommended solo travel to cure that. If you're going to do it your first time out of the country, just go by yourself and really throw yourself in the deep end, because you'll learn a lot about yourself. And that can be nerve-wracking for some people. So I think that having some of those tools would be really helpful. So tell me a little bit about, and we're kind of getting towards the end here, but I'm still very curious, helping people through mental health challenges. That would be really challenging, I would think. Do you find a way to balance that conversation for yourself? I guess what I'm asking is, how do you hear some of those traumatic stories or deal with some of those traumatic issues as a clinician, and not let your empathy get too strained?
Yes, it's an issue that therapists and change workers of all types struggle with, because almost, I won't say everyone, but most people who get into the mental health field have struggled with mental health themselves. And so they know how it feels and they know how painful it can be. And when you are dealing with, 4 to 8 different people every single day who are coming in who are anxious or depressed or even suicidal, that can definitely wear on a person. I forget what they call it. Perhaps, I think compassion fatigue is more for something else, but
seems to fit though.
It's that same idea. You're burning out because you become numb to it. And I have felt that at times, but only like in a very light sense. Like, I've been able to catch it before it gets too bad. And what I have to remind myself is to do the same techniques that I am giving to my clients. Like, I've got to meditate and I've got to do those things, because when I don't, my own mental health suffers. And I think it's so telling that, I think it's such a resource for me that I have had these issues, because I'm now much more in tune with my own emotions and I can see that before it comes up. And it's really just about picking up on it before it gets catastrophic.
Have you ever had in a session with somebody or in a conversation, those kind of brick wall moments, that kind of moment of like that emotion just comes out of nowhere and hits you in the face, and it's like, oh, I didn't see that coming, and you just feel it really suddenly? Or are you always able to kind of tell, we might be going into territory that's going to tug on my heartstrings? Are you able to identify it early on, or does it sometimes hit you in the face?
Oh, it sometimes hits me in the face. I connect with people very deeply on an emotional level. I'm an introvert, and so the conversations that I have tend to be very deep and very personal. And when I'm working with a client, especially when I am deeply invested in their process, if we've been seeing each other for more than a couple sessions, it can be very tough, because this is, they're my client, but they're also kind of my friend. And I haven't yet had it happen where I've lost someone, someone commits suicide, but I've heard of therapists who have that same, who had that experience. And it's devastating, because not only do you partly feel like you failed them, but you also feel like you lost a friend. And when we go into those deep emotional states, I do feel like I'm about to hit a brick wall in this. I've just got to remind myself I'm the professional in this situation. Like, they are coming to me for help. If I get too emotional, then I'm not going to be any use to them. And so it's kind of like shutting myself out of that, or dissociating from that, and then dealing with that after the session if it's still something that's arising in me.
So how does that play into your relationship? I know it's a new relationship, but is that something that because some of the tools you're describing seem like they would be really, really helpful for a relationship. I mean, do you use those tools in your personal life as well, just as much as you do kind of in your professional life?
I do, yes. I'd say that hypnotists, I should say, at their core, they are excellent communicators. Like, hypnosis is all about learning language patterns and learning the psychology of how people do their day-to-day lives. And that communication has really saved our relationship, because there have been days where I come back from, the office. I'm working at home, but and I am just exhausted and emotionally drained. And if we're about to have a fight, like, I can't handle that. And she's a little older than I am, and so she's also got that maturity of just recognizing, like, now is not the time. Like, I need to set aside these feelings. We can come back to this, but we need to value the relationship first and really work through that. And then when we're feeling better, we can address that separate issue.
So can I put you on the spot here? So being an expert communicator and good at analyzing people, I mean, listen, do my voice patterns have any giveaways that I'm an anxious person? What does my body language? I mean, what is how do you read someone like me through a camera, through maybe a virtual session?
I would say in your case, your voice does not give you away. I don't think that you seem very comfortable behind the mic for sure. I would say
it's a good barrier, though. That's why I like it, because it's like you don't have to see, I don't have to see too much of me.
I know what you mean for sure. When I'm working with someone, sometimes it's very clear that they're anxious, but as an anxious person myself, we become very good at hiding it and just putting on a good face. But no, I'd say that oftentimes I really have to dive in and know a person before I can really get to know what their issues are and what they want to work on.
But you are comfortable and skilled at doing the kind of online, maybe a Zoom call session in the pandemic. Was that a hard shift to make, to go from in person to? I mean, it's been hard for everybody, but yeah. I feel like especially in in therapy, in psychology, in hypnosis, and any sort of those really, I don't know. It's almost the room, right? There's that kind of old school vibe of the therapist's couch. It's kind of the room, the environment, the smells, the sounds that have a lot of effect. Was it hard to switch and do a lot of this online?
I actually built my business to be online from the start, and that's because I wanted to travel. I knew if I was moving around every 3 months, and a brick and mortar place was not going to work for me. And I did sacrifice some things, because when you're working in hypnosis with a person face to face, you can use so many other things. Like, you can bring in tools, you can use their physical body with body movement kind of hypnosis. You sacrifice some of that stuff, as well as the credibility of a hypnotist's office. When they come into that office and they see your certifications on the walls and your couch where you've helped, I don't know, thousands of people, and that in that office, you are the man, you are the hypnotist. And that can be kind of tough to build a credibility at times. But I also find on the reverse end, it's a strength, because hypnosis is all about being comfortable with a hypnotist. And when someone can do hypnosis on their couch, like with a Zoom call, they are already in that comfortable setting. They feel much safer, and oftentimes the work is much easier to do.
It sounds like that's would be a hard problem for a therapist, even if they had a brick and mortar shop. I imagine the credibility issue can be tough to overcome. And I would think by the time someone's arriving at your doorstep or on your virtual doorstep, that they've already kind of bought in a little bit to what you do. What's that struggle like? Do you face a lot of credibility challenges, people online, nasty messages? I mean, how do you get those, and how do you deal with them?
I don't get a lot of nasty messages. I get a lot of very curious questions and that kind of thing. Um, Initially, when I started out, I had that idea: you build it and they will come, and that's not how any business works. But what I've found it really helped to establish my credibility is to do online videos and to do the podcast and really just put myself out there, because I knew so much about hypnosis, and by writing and doing videos where I talked about it, I was able to establish myself as that authority figure in that space. And so when someone comes to me, they've oftentimes seen, I don't know, 10, 20 of my videos, and they know essentially what I'm about, and they know that I'm not just full of crap. I am actually science-based, and I have these tools that I can help them.
So they already are maybe more comfortable with you than you are with them, because they've already got
Exactly.
an inside look. I mean, digital content certainly does have that effect. So how do you kind of dance the dance of giving away enough of that free content to lure people in, but not so much that they could just watch your courses and be,
Yeah.
dandying on their way?
At first, I really held back on giving out my best stuff, but I found that when I give out my best work, especially, I should say, when I break up my best work, not like give it wholesale to them, when I break up my best work, people typically say, like, if this is what he's giving away for free, what is it actually like to work with them? And of course, there are things that I do not give away because they're insider secrets or something. They're the most effective tools that I have. Those things I do reserve for the actual clinical or therapeutic sessions. But at the same time, my core belief is that I want to help people. And hypnosis is sometimes cost prohibitive for some. I mean, you do have to pay for a person's time and their experience. And so I find that when I give people actual quality things, it actually works in my favor, even though I'm giving away things that I could be selling.
So you're probably having your door knocked down then with the course of the pandemic, because you've got a lot of quality content out there already that people are, I would imagine, pretty desperately needing now in
Yes.
this time and in this age. So building the website, building this kind of brand out. I mean, what's the ultimate goal? Obviously, the kind of digital nomad life is for you, but are you hoping to kind of build this out into a large brand with a staff? Are you just kind of hoping to build it up to the point where you can be your digital nomad and be footloose and fancy free? And how big are you going?
I thought for a long time I wanted to be one of the big hypnotists. Like, I wanted 10 people on my staff, and I wanted to have other hypnotists under me. And I wasn't sure exactly how to get there. And when I started building this business, I realized I'm not building it for fame or fortune. I'm building it for freedom. And I wanted to be able to move around the country or around the world at any time. And I think I really just want to build it up enough that I can work at my own schedule and charge what I want to charge and help as many people as I have the time and energy to help. I think any more than that would just be doing a disservice to me, because I would be stepping away from actually working hands-on with people and more into that CEO business role.
Well, that's I think a very reasonable goal. I think that's a very achievable, measurable, reasonable place to get to. And I wish you the best of luck with that. If you want to find more about Doug, if you're interested in hypnosis, if you're interested in using some of the skills we've talked about today to overcome anxiety or stress, you can find him on his website, anywherehypnosis.com, where he publishes his podcast. You can also find him on Instagram at Making Your Meaning on Instagram. And there's a lot of great content there. There's some really interesting, fun I hope you have the best of successful business and the most adventurous, fun digital nomad life. When you're ready to take that trip out of the country, you pop back over to me and I'll guide you through it there.
Awesome. Looking forward to it. Thank you.
That sounds cool. Thanks so much for your time, Doug. You guys are watching Best of Travel here on IBMTV every Tuesday at 11 Eastern. Don't forget to stick around. We've got a lot of other great shows here on IBM TV, and I will see you all next week. We are coming up on the Christmas season, so hopefully we can have a really fun next week, because next week will be our last episode before the Christmas break. I will see you all very, very soon. Enjoy watching some of Doug's content, watching some of his videos, and listening to some of his podcasts. It's really some great stuff out there. I'll see you next week.